Hello, welcome to today's lesson on data visualization and adaptive structuration theory. Let's go. We're going to start out by talking about creating texts from data. The basic idea here is that data doesn't matter until we assign meaning to it. If I just say to you, for, what does that mean? For what? For in the context of what situation? What does the number 4 mean? The number 4 doesn't mean anything by itself. You have to know under what context we're talking about the number 4. So you need to have some sort of meaning attached to the number 4 for the number 4 to become information. And there are many ways that that can happen. One of the ways is to create a graph or a chart or other sort of visualization with it. Data visualization, or data viz for short, is a way to make meaning with data. And we are going to learn how to do that in this class today. And we are going to use that as a practice throughout this course as a way to think about our own interactions with different forms of media. Here is an example of a data visualization from the book Dear Data by Georgia Lupi and Stephanie Posavec. And we will find out what it means in a little bit here. But this is one data visualization. It makes no sense because we don't have the key. So right now, this is meaningless, right? We would just see lots of little marks, some shapes, some dots, some lines, but there's no meaning attached to it. We don't have the ability to attach meaning to it. And so it is not information, it's just data. All right, so let's talk about how to make a data visualization. You should get out your tracking of how often you use paper that you did in the last week. And the way to make a data visualization is to start with a question. For example, you could start with the question, how do I use paper? Just a for instance. And then you add some smaller questions within that question. When do I use paper? What do I use paper for? How much paper do I use? What kind of paper do I use? Do I choose whether I'm using the paper, or does someone give me the paper or make me use the paper? What kind of paper is it? Etc. And there are many questions that you could ask. But all of these sub-questions are giving you richness and nuance around the major question, how do I use paper? Here now is our way to turn that data into information. Here are the symbols that go with that data visualization. So all of these are about time. So Georgia was tracking all the times that she checked what time it was, and she was checking. She was tracking when she checked the time, what day of the week it was, why she was checking it, and how she felt about it, whether she was late or not late, etc. And you will see that this is a postcard that she mailed to Stephanie Posavec Dear Data was a project that these two women did. One of them lives in London and the other lives in New York City, or did at this time. And they each tracked the same thing every week and then made a data visualization of it on a postcard and then mailed it to the other one. And they did this every week for a year. And just like by hand made these data visualizations and kept like a blog of it on the internet, and people really liked it. I think they also maybe had an Instagram that was attached to it. Excuse me. So anyway, this was a project that they were doing, and then they made it into a book, and then it also got quite famous. People liked it a lot, and eventually the Metropolitan Museum of Art bought all the postcards, and so now they're part of the permanent collection at the Met. And there have been several follow-up books, and so and now Stephanie and Georgia travel around teaching people how to do this, and so it's a whole big thing now. Anyway, we're going to look at some more examples. So after you have figured out what your questions are, then you want to collect your data. You want to keep track of it. Some people like to use the Notes app on their phone. Some people like to put an index card in their pocket and just like put a little tick mark in there. It depends on the kind of data that you're tracking sometimes, and sometimes it just depends on your own routines or your own personal preferences. But you want to keep track of whatever thing that you're tracking that day or that week or that series of days, and make sure that you are noting whatever thing that you're tracking. And then you want to organize your data. This is the step that you're at now. You want to look for patterns or things that are surprising. You want to spend a little bit of time contemplating your data and thinking about how you want to organize it. And then you need to categorize it. What groupings can you make? Which makes sense with the data that you have? Do you want to organize your data by day of the week, or does it make more sense to organize your data by type of paper, or whether you chose to use it or not, or what its use was? What kinds of categorization are you going to prioritize? Time is sometimes a good way to categorize, but sometimes it doesn't tell the most interesting story or reveal the most interesting information. And so you don't have to always start with time as the way that you are organizing and categorizing. Maybe it makes way more sense to organize and categorize based on a different variable. So what grouping are you going to use as your major grouping, and then what are your subgroups going to be within that? Are you going to start out with whether you chose to use the paper or not, and then the subgrouping is going to be what type of paper it was, and how you felt about using it, maybe, or how much you ended up using of that particular type. That's a perfectly reasonable way to organize your data. You do not always have to organize it by time, even though we are very, very geared towards that in our culture. I am not expecting you to do it that way. So you want to organize and categorize your data by some major groups and then some subgroups within that. Here is another key or legend. This is one that Stephanie made. So this is Stephanie's postcard about time that she sent to Georgia, and hers, we can see, looks different. She had lots of lines and kind of triangle-y shapes, and she told us what time of day. She looked at the clock, and then what she looked at the time on. And yeah, and how many times at that exact time instance it looks like. So when you're looking at your data, you're looking to find a story. What is surprising here? What is most interesting about this data? Is there anything that you didn't expect to find? So are you using paper plates a lot? That could be weird and unusual. Are you mostly using paper when you're studying the playbook for football? Are you mostly using paper because you keep getting receipts from CVS and those things are like, you know, this long? Are you mostly using paper when you are reading your textbooks and you forgot that those are paper? What is it that you're using paper for? What is it that's surprising about your data? Maybe what's surprising is how little paper you use. That could be the surprising thing. Find the story. Find the surprising or interesting or unusual thing here. Think about your expectations. Think about what doesn't fit with those. Tell us the story that is here in your data. And then you get to do the fun part, pick some symbols. They can be icons, they can be indexes, and they can be symbols. I should have said pick some signs, really. How can you represent this data? Do you want to show connections between attributes, or do you want to highlight the differences between them? Do you want to demonstrate how much of something or how little of something? The idea here is that you get to be creative at this part. Be creative. I'm not looking for bar charts. I'm looking for you to have fun now. You're representing your data in a visual way, yes, but it can look like lollipops. It can look like Christmas trees with ornaments on it. It can look like someone weeding a garden. It can look like levels in a Super Mario Brothers video game. It could look like anything you want, as long as you give me a key so that I can interpret this data and understand the information in it. Here is Stephanie's week of time. This does not look like a bar chart, right? And note, these are just lines and other lines and some dots. This did not take artistic skill. And she used a ruler. I am not going to grade you on artistic skill. I promise. Okay, so you can experiment. Also, you can try some like little versions and see what works best before you commit to the one that you're going to turn in. This isn't going to take a lot of time to experiment and mess around a little bit. Your goal here is to communicate your data, your information, really, to me in a visual manner. And then draw it. Now, if you have something like a tablet and you would like to draw it digitally and you are comfortable with your interface, etc., and that's just more convenient for you, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. I'm not going to stop you. But I'm generally expecting you to just have a piece of paper and draw on that. If you have more than one color of pen or marker or highlighter, that makes it a lot easier because you can use colors to add variables and kind of differentiate between variables. If you don't, you can use shading, you can use shapes, you can use size, you can use placement on the page. All of these things indicate difference between one variable and another. And that's not even getting into things like different kinds of flour or different kinds of sports equipment, or right, like you can do all kinds of things to make differences between types of information. So once you've figured out what you're going to communicate and how you're going to communicate it. And you can take a photo of it with your phone or use a scanner app on your phone and turn in a JPEG or PDF of it to me. I'm not real picky about file format, but I have to be able to open it on our Schoology space. And make sure you make a legend or key so that I can make meaning of the symbols in the way that you have, because otherwise it's just going to be data to me and not information, right? You got to make sure that I can understand it, because if I can't understand it, then we are in trouble, and we don't want to be in trouble. Okay. Let's look at a couple more examples. Here is another one that Georgia made. This one looks like music, right? I don't know what music it makes. The markings on the sides aren't real musical notation, but the inside part kind of is. I don't know if you could actually play this as music though. So if we look at the key, it says this is a week of musical complaints. And so it says that each note is a complaint. And it says what the complaint was about, whether she needed to complain or not, and who the complaint was to. So we could put these together and you can take a look at them to kind of actually read it. So we can see, for instance, all the ones that are all the way filled in are to her boyfriend. So we can see there was a lot of complaining to her boyfriend about, what's this swirly one? How she feels. So tired, so bored, etc. Well, that makes sense. Oh, let's see if who she complained about her boyfriend to. Her boyfriend. She complained to her boyfriend about her boyfriend a lot. Okay, all right. There's a lot of complaining to her boyfriend about things, isn't there? There's a lot of filled in ones. Ooh, this one has only one boyfriend dot. What was this one? Somebody else. Ah, she didn't complain about other people to her boyfriend. Who did she complain about other people to? Friends and family. Interesting. Okay. So we can read this and see the information, turn this data into information with the key, right? So you need to make sure that you give me a key so that I understand what is going on. Yours does not need to be as complex as this. This is a professional person who is paid to do this project, but do be creative like this. Okay, so now it is your turn. Use this process to make a visualization of your data about your paper use. Be creative, make mistakes, have fun. I am grading you on your tracking and your making meaning of your data. I am not grading you on your artistic merit. I am grading you on making meaning of your data, okay? Don't turn in Excel type pie charts. Don't turn in bar graphs. I don't want those. I want data visualizations that you make, okay? You should turn these in the assignment for today. And this is the only assignment that you have today. You don't have a quiz, you don't have a discussion board, you just have the first data visualization assignment, all right? And there are some examples there that you can look at if you need some inspiration. But be creative, make mistakes, have fun. You're gonna be okay. All right, let's talk about adaptive structuration theory. Adaptive structuration theory is about how organizations work, how language works, but also what makes a game fun. In my relatively tiny free time, my partner and I design games. We design board games and card games. And one of the tricky things about designing board games and card games is balancing the structure necessary to make the game understandable and not completely confusing to people, and the freedom that makes a game dynamic and interesting to play over and over, so that there's some sort of difference between playing the game one time and playing the game the next time. And adaptive structuration theory is about trying to find that balance. So social structures shape people's actions. You have to decide when you are in New York City, for example, whether you are going to wait to cross the street until the light turns, or if you're going to cross the street when everybody else crosses the street. There are two competing social structures there. The one that is the law that says that you should only cross the road when the light says that you can cross the road, and the other, which is the kind of peer pressure that says that you cross the road when all the other people cross the road. And when I first went to New York City when I was 16 years old, from my village of 305 people, where there are more cows than humans, I thought that you should only cross the road when the light turned, but that's not how the social structure works in Manhattan. You cross the road when the other people cross the road, right? These social structures act on us and they shape our actions and they tell us what we should and shouldn't do. And these shape our actions. But our actions also shape the social structures. We ourselves as humans, we make the laws and we make the way that the world works. We decide what is right and what is wrong as a collective, and we ourselves are acting on each other as part of society. And so social structures shape our actions, but we also shape the social structures around us. Therefore, social structures are both the medium and the product of interaction. And this is called the duality of structure. That is, structure is working both ways. It is both the thing that is working on interaction, where the interaction is happening, right? Within which interaction is happening, the medium, and it's what happens when people interact. So you're both creating it while you're interacting, and it's how you're interacting, which is weird, but also true. It's kind of like how when you're breathing in the atmosphere, right? You breathe in oxygen and some carbon dioxide and a lot of hydrogen and helium, mostly hydrogen, I think. Chemistry people can help me. And then you breathe out, also atmosphere, right? In the atmosphere, breathing happens in the atmosphere, and breathing is a thing that is done to atmosphere. Okay, social structures are both the medium and the product of interaction. You're creating social structures when you interact with social structures interact with you. All of these things are interlinked. You are acting on them and being acted on by them. And all of these things are happening simultaneously. Structuration also includes the principle of interaction. Basically, people are relatively free to act as they want to. They're able to interact with other people. You get to decide what you're going to do, if you're going to walk out into the road in front of a car or not, if you're going to stand on a street corner and wait for the light to turn or not, etc. You can generally make those choices yourself. But we also have rules. We have social norms of how to act. We have laws about what will happen to you if a police officer sees you crossing the road when you're not supposed to, etc. And then each individual person also has resources, your own personal traits, abilities, and possessions that you bring to an interaction. If you're super charismatic, if you're very athletic, if you are related to someone in the police force, things like that. And so as you are interacting with people and negotiating the rules and social norms of how to act, your own resources can change what things happen to you as you are making those choices and negotiating those rules. So here are the main premises. People change the rules to fit the situation so that they can accomplish their goals. You try to make the social situation work to your advantage, is the premise of this theory. Whether these changes work depends on morals, communication, and power. So if you propose to change the rules and the other people in the social group believe that the rules are good rules, are moral rules, your changes aren't going to work. However, if they believe that you are a moral person and the rules are not moral, then maybe you can get the rules changed. For example, if you are a person who believes that police officers shoot unarmed black men at a much higher rate than they shoot other populations of people, and that police officers are by and large trained in a way that promotes them to escalate situations of violence and hostility rather than de-escalate them, and that this is dangerous for both police officers and civilians, then you might be for 8 Can't Wait, a campaign that is arguing for de-escalation tactics, and especially in areas that have large African American populations, so that police forces can be safer for themselves and also for civilians by learning de-escalation tactics, with the goal that fewer black men be shot, but also with the goal that the police forces themselves be safer. And if people see that as a good goal, then they might want to try to change those laws and policies in police departments. But these things also might depend on your own communication choices and whether you are a savvy communicator or not. And they might depend on your power. If you are seen as a person who is a powerful person who holds elective office maybe, or who is a well-known celebrity, or who just is kind of a mover and a shaker in your community, then people are going to listen to you a lot more than if you're just kind of a random person, or if you're a person who is seen as a troublemaker, or is seen as someone whose ideas don't make any sense, or something like that. So whether people's attempts to change the rules work depends a lot on these 3 factors. Now, the tricky part in any sort of society or game is that you have to have enough stability that people know what to do. You can't just have people walking into the road whenever they want and cars going whenever they want, because then no cars would go, or no people would get hit all the time or whatever, right? And you would just the system would break down immediately. You have to have some stability. People have to know what to do. You have to have some rules, some governance, some order. There needs to be some coordination among people in society or in a game. But there has to be enough change for people to be able to have new ideas, and for people to be able to adapt to new situations, and for people to be able to say, hey, this isn't working, we want to change it now. And if that's not possible, then A, your game is going to be very boring to play because it's going to be the same every time, like playing tic-tac-toe, but also your society's not going to work because it's going to only work in the exact way that the people who made it up to work, and they probably didn't imagine everything. And it's not going to work for any situation they didn't imagine it for. And that's going to cause a lot of trouble and a lot of problems. So you need to balance this stability and this change, and those are not things that are easy to balance. Those are not things that are that can be balanced once and then you're done. These are things that have to be balanced and rebalanced and rebalanced and rebalanced. This is one of the things that life is about, is figuring out this balance between stability and change, and having a good strategy for balancing these things. All right, so before next class, you need to read the textbook chapter 3 about newspapers. I am assuming that you have gotten the textbook by this point, so I have stopped scanning the textbook for you. You should read in the actual textbook or find a friend who has one, the chapter about newspapers. Turn in Media Tracking 1 about paper, which is your data visualization and the key, so that I can make it be information, not just data, about paper. Again, you can take a photo of what you draw with your phone, or a scanner app on your phone. Something like that is totally fine. Track where you get your news until next class. And where you get it includes apps, it includes word of mouth. So if your friend tells you a piece of news, that counts. It includes social media. It includes local news. It includes all sorts of things. Okay, so track where you get your news until next class. So from now until Monday. From now until Monday, track where you get your news. All right. I will see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye.